And today we're going to be looking at whether there's proof of election fraud. Okay, and I'm going to give you step-by-steps of what I did to determine whether there was in fact any proof that there is indeed election fraud from our recent election. So on November 15th, this was Sunday morning, this was yesterday, I'm recording this on November the 16th, we had one of Trump's lawyer who went on national television on Fox News, Attorney Powell, and she said something rather startling. This is what she said. We're getting ready to overturn election results in multiple states. She also said, we have so much evidence, I feel like it's coming through a fire hose. And finally, she said, I don't make comments without having the evidence to back it up. And my first reaction when I heard that, I thought to myself, you know what, that's a pretty bold statement. Pretty bold statement. And I wonder if it's true. And my second reaction was, where's the evidence? Where is the evidence of these bold claims? And this is not the first time she's made such bold claims. And indeed, there are two other attorneys who have said the same thing, pretty bold claims from Trump's attorney. So where is the evidence? I know many conservatives are eagerly anticipating and waiting to see the evidence. I'm also one of them. And so I decided to do a little investigation myself. I'm by nature, by my personality, I like to analyze and look at data, information, just as who I am. So if you Google Dominion software, you will find a whole bunch of articles denying that there was any type of election fraud using the software from Dominion. From the Washington Post, you got this headline: Giuliani's fantasy parade of false voter fraud claims. And then from CBS News, Trump spreads baseless claim of Dominion voting system after losing the election. From USA Today, fact check: Dominion voting machines didn't delete votes from Trump or switch them to Biden. From New York Magazine, Trump's new vote fraud theory is so much crazier than you realize. From CNN, fact-checking the baseless claim that millions of Trump votes were deleted. And from Dominion Voting, from the computer company itself, this is what they state. Dominion Voting Systems categorically denies false assertions about vote switching issues with our voting systems. Vote deletion switching assertions are completely false, they state. And yet we have Donald Trump stating in one of his tweets that Dominion deleted 2.7 million votes nationwide. It's quite a bold claim if this is not true. So the implication is, from the media, from the mainstream media, that Trump is trying to overturn the election results with this crazy conspiracy theory that somehow Dominion software was involved in switching votes and deleting votes. And they think that conservatives are believing a false conspiracy. So once again, I ask the question, where is the evidence if all this is true? So I decided to look a little bit more deeper. And indeed, there are some conservative websites, fringe conservative websites, that seem to suggest that they got the data, which suggests that indeed there was indeed deleting of votes and switching of votes from Trump to Biden. And I thought to myself, you know what, I want to look at this data myself. I can't just trust what someone writes. And so I've created a step-by-step guide for you to follow. You yourself can look at the data yourself and analyze the numbers and do some simple multiplication and determine whether in fact there was any fraud or not. And this data comes from Edison Research. You can see this is the data that was being used by ABC, CBS, CNN, NBC, and the New York Times. And you can find the data from the New York Times itself. And I'm going to provide a link at the description of this video where you can copy and paste the data link. You can look at the information yourself, look at the raw data yourself, and then analyze the results. So you can see this is from Texas. We're going to be focusing on Michigan as an example. But you can see there, this is from Texas, okay? You can change them, any state. You can put here, you can edit it and put New York, or Michigan or Wisconsin or Georgia, okay? And you'll get the same data results. And if you click on this right here, what pops up is this. It will open up the text results, okay, from the New York Times, okay? So no one can dispute this is raw data. Now, if you're using Chrome browser, when you pull up the data, it's going to look like this. It's going to look like one big fat old mess. So therefore, what you need to do is the following. You need to go to the Chrome Web Store and then search for a specific extension that's going to make that data more readable. And the extension that you need, this is free, is JSON Formatter. This is how it looks like. So once you find it through the search store, just go ahead and add to Chrome, and that's going to add it automatically. And if it doesn't do automatically, you can just go ahead and click on Parsed, right? And this is how it's going to look like. Again, it's going to be more readable. And again, we're going to be looking at the one from Michigan State. And then after you do that, I want you to hit Control F, which is the search button within your browser to search for specific things, right? So hit Control F. Hold down the Control and hit and press the F button. And then after you do that, I want you to type 0.578. And you'll see it like this, okay? And then, because there's several instances of 0.578 when there's data, I want you to click it 3 times, okay? And then you're going to look like it's going to look like something like this, okay? 3 out of 10 results, right? 5.78, there it is. It's highlighted, okay? So we're going to be looking at this data, the data before it, and the data after it, okay, to analyze what's going on, the funny business of these numbers. Again, this is the third data point of 0.578. And to read this, you can see, foremost, you can see this. This is coming from Edison, right? These are the actual votes. And this is the percentage of the votes. So Trump, according to this data set, Trump won 57.8% of this vote. And Biden won 40.1% of this vote. And this is how you get the math. So again, let's look at the data set before that number, right? So we have 550,389 votes, okay? We want to try to figure out how many votes did Trump win. Again, he earned 58.2% of the vote. So just multiply it. Simple math, okay? So 0.582, multiply that by 550,389 votes, and that means that Trump won 320,000 votes and 326, right? Now we can determine Biden's votes. So again, here it is. Multiply 0.397 by 550,389 votes, and he gets total tally of 218,504 votes. Okay? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, okay? You can do this on your own. Let's go to the next data set. So here we have this. We're going to multiply this with this and this with this. All right? So let's just go ahead and do that. Trump, multiply 0.578 times by 573,857 votes. He gets a grand total of 331,689 votes. And then Biden, multiply 0.401 times that by 573,857 votes. Altogether, he gets 230,117 votes. Okay? You compare that with the previous data set. You can see that Trump went up approximately from 320 to 331,000 votes, went up approximately 11,000 votes. And Biden, you can also see he went from 218,000 votes to 230,000 votes, also approximately 11,000 votes. So these numbers should be increasing. When you go from one data set to another data set, they should be increasing, right? Because more votes are being tallied, right? They're just being divided differently for each candidate. Okay, so far everything is very clear. Everything seems to be straightforward. But then we get to this data set. So you can see there, the total votes is 574,417. So let's go ahead and multiply them, right? 0.568 times 574,417. And Trump gets 326,269 votes. Biden gets 0.406, multiply that 574,417. he gets a grand total of 233,213 votes. That doesn't seem, something is wrong. Because in the previous tally, Trump had 331,689. And yet there was a decrease. And furthermore, Biden, he went from 230,000 votes to 233,000 votes. Here's the deal. Between this data set and this data set, okay, there's only 560 votes difference. In other words, the maximum amount of votes that Trump or Biden could have possibly have earned is 560 votes. That's it. And yet we see quite a difference. What's the difference? Well, Trump lost 5,400 votes. 5,420 votes. And Biden gained 3,096 votes. Again, the maximum that either candidate could have possibly have earned, not lost, earned, is 560 votes. How do we account for this? How do you count the fact that Trump decreased by 5,420 votes and Biden gained by 3,096 votes? It doesn't make any sense. The numbers should be increasing, not decreasing. So Trump lost, and Biden gained some mysterious votes out of the blue. How do you explain this? This is the reason why. It's results like this that conservatives saying, you know what, there was cheating, there was switching of votes, and there were deletion of votes going on. This seems to be fraud. How do you explain this? How do you account for this? Here's some video evidence of what took place in Pennsylvania with the Pennsylvania votes. This is straight from CNN. This is about 42 seconds long. You're going to see here, again, the focus is on Pennsylvania. You can see that Trump starts out with 1.609 million votes. I'm sorry, 1,690,000 votes and 589, okay? You're going to see how it switches there towards the end of the video clip. So let me go ahead and share with you the video clip itself. So again, about 42 seconds long.
At the moment, we don't know that though. At the moment, these...
Okay, there it is. Right, there it is.
Which, you know, and again, if you come at this from a Republican perspective, I did Joe Biden's math to get him up. Donald Trump's leading here.
We're going to wait a few seconds.
He's leading here. We expect him to win here.
It's going to go to, I believe, Arizona, and from Arizona, Michigan, and from Michigan goes back to Pennsylvania. Okay, so there's Arizona. After this, you'll see Michigan.
So, again, we're open to being surprised, but if it plays out,
here it comes. It's coming.
That's where we're going to be. That's where we'll be as we go to the West Coast, somewhere in that ballpark. It's not an exact science, but somewhere
there it goes.
Looking at.
Look what happens. So let me share with you the screenshots. This is the before, and this is the after. Before, again, Trump had 1,690,589 votes. And then after a few seconds, he went to 1,670,631 votes. And Biden, on the other hand, he went from 1,252,537 votes to 1,272,495 votes. So Trump lost. He lost exactly 19,958 votes. Well, surprise, surprise, Biden earned 19,958 votes. Again, how do you account for this? And this is something you cannot dispute. This is something was shown on live television on CNN on the night of the election. Something fishy is going on. And there's no such thing as computer glitch. You know, I used to write software. When I was in high school, way back in the 80s, I used to write software. I used to write computer games. So I know how software works. Computers do not randomly make mistakes. They don't. It has to be programmed. The program had to write the software that would make the mistake. They just don't do it randomly. It doesn't work that way. So this was programmed into the software to do the takeaway votes from one candidate and give it to the other candidate. There's no other explanation for this. Okay? So people throughout the internet, conservatives, have done a deeper analysis of all the states using the raw data from Edison. And this is what they come up with in terms of how many votes have been switched from Trump to Biden and how many actually have been deleted from Trump. And we're going to focus on Pennsylvania, Georgia, and what's the other one? And Virginia. Those three we're going to focus on. So So Pennsylvania, right? He lost this, and you have to add this with this. This is actually how many votes Trump would earn back if he reversed the results. He would earn over 1 million votes back. Virginia, there's Virginia. This with this, you get 800,000 votes, approximately 800,000 votes. Georgia, this with this, you get 50,981 votes. This would, if this somehow is reversed, it goes back to Trump, it would have a major implication in the electoral college votes. In other words, Trump would win Georgia, and he would earn 16 points. He would win Virginia and earn 13 points. And he also would win in Pennsylvania and earn 20 points. And vice versa, Biden would lose 16 points from Georgia, 13 points from Virginia, and 20 points from Pennsylvania. In the final tally, just on this data alone, let alone all the shenanigans that have also taken place during this election. Just on the data, raw data alone, Trump will have a total tally of 281 votes, points, and then Biden will have 257. In other words, Trump would win the election. Would win the election just based upon the raw data that's found from Edison. How do we account for this? Now, if all this is true, not only would it signify the biggest scandal, the biggest corruption, the biggest fraud in U.S. history, but I also believe it would create civil unrest in this nation. I do believe there'll be some sincere, honest Democrats if they're presented with the evidence of fraud and corruption. They ultimately would say, you know what, this is not right, this is not acceptable, and they would reject the Democratic Party and accept the results for Trump. But I also believe there'll be another segment of the Democrats who don't care, who would not care. In their mind, the ends justify the means. And they would revolt at the thought that Trump will earn another 4 years at the White House. They would revolt, and they would cause civil unrest. And I also believe there's some powerful people who would go down with this, and in their mind, if we're going down, we're going to bring the whole nation down. That's how the mentality is going to be, if it would come down to this. So I believe there'll be civil unrest and burning and looting, you name it. And they might even create the collapse of this nation. If all this is true. And in the end, I happen to believe that for a while there would be civil unrest and complete instability in our nation for a number of months, and they may even have the upper hand, the bad guys in all this. But in the end, I believe that God will bring about a national restoration for our nation. And there'll be a renewal, and there'll be a cleansing, and we're going to get rid of all the corruption in our nation. And we'll become one nation under God. I believe in the end, that's how it's going to play out. In fact, I talk about this in my sermon, National Restoration, which I think I preached back in July. I'll post a link at the conclusion of this message. So, time will soon tell. Time will soon tell whether there is indeed indisputable evidence of election fraud and corruption. Time will soon tell. We will soon see whether all those three lawyers who are being so bold about their claims about fraud and corruption, whether their bold claims will become a reality. We'll soon find out. Hang on to your seats. I think soon we'll find out within the next few weeks, less than a month or so. And there might be more that I'm going to share. So for the time being, we're going to wrap it up with that. Let me end it with this scripture from Luke chapter 8, verse 17. For there's nothing hidden that would not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that would not be known or brought out into the open. In the end, everything will be revealed, and everything will be exposed. Hang on to your seats, because I believe we're going to be heading for a wild ride in this nation. Stay tuned. Again, there might be more coming. Stay tuned. God bless you all, and goodbye.